Sam, can you tell us a little bit about these two articles? You were featured on the San Francisco Chronicle in 1969. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened back then?
Yes, I was a young person. I was kind of healthy. I was in good health. And I kept reading about nuclear war, thermonuclear war, chemical warfare, biological warfare. There was no end to it. And so I saw these fallout shelter signs all over the city of San Francisco and Oakland. So I said, my God, these fallout shelters are misleading. They're World War III fallout shelters. There's no shelter to run to in case of a nuclear war. So I just got so frustrated. A couple of nights, I just cut them down. And the police found me and they arrested me.
Right here on the article, it says that that the Nobel laureate asked the judge, if the sign is removed, would you consider this a public service? And but the deputy district attorney objected, saying the question was irrelevant. So what do you think about that?
Well, they did argue in court. The DA, the district attorney, I think his last name is here, Carpenter, I'm not sure, but he has his responsibility, whether it's good or bad. He's got a responsibility. He's got to carry it out. And in so doing, he could be wrong, but he still has to do his job. That's the bad thing about our system. And he did. He backed it up, and he was dead wrong. There was no shelter in a thermonuclear war, none whatsoever. And the Nobel laureate that backed me up, he came up to the forefront, and he said, he worked on the atomic bomb, and he said there was no shelter.
So you're saying that the shelters you were taking down were a farce?
Yes, they were fallout shelters, and they were big signs about 1 foot by 2 foot, and they had a so-called kind of a symbol for arrows and all kinds of symbols in a triangle zone for us to run there for shelter. And Dr. Owen Chamberlain, who came to my trial, he worked on the atomic bomb, and he came to my trial, and he said there was no shelter. It was all a fraud.
Yeah, I can read that right here. It actually says, fallout shelters are a fraud, said Dr. Chamberlain, who worked on the Manhattan Project, which produced the atomic bomb during World War II. So I guess he would be qualified to know about these issues, huh?
Yes, he would. He was a physicist at UC Berkeley, and he had worked on the atomic bomb. He had been to Los Alamos, New Mexico. And when he heard about my arrest, being arrested for cutting down fallout shelter signs, I contacted him, and he came to my trial. He was really nice about it. Some other Nobel laureates backed me up also.
Now, Sam, how long have you been an activist?
Well, I grew up, and when I was around 35 years old, of course I'm 74 years old now, but at the age of 35, I was very, very frustrated with the shelter system and nuclear weapons. I says, my God, there's nowhere to go. There's no shelter. We have nowhere to run to. So since I was around 35 years old, I started asking questions, and I've been involved ever since. And of course, I've been paying the price for it. Yeah, I mean, I feel sorry for myself.
Now, why do you think the government was putting up those fallout shelter signs, knowing that there was no fallout shelter?
Our government and the Russian government both had to do the same thing and lie to the populations, their masses. And by putting up the fallout shelter signs, our government and the Russian government lied to its population, to the masses, to the people. And we bought it. We believed it. We believed there was a shelter to go to. My family believed it, and they came down on me for tearing them down. Everyone I know believed it, and they were against me for tearing them down. And I did go to jail, just for a short time, just overnight.
So I understand you're the only one of the brothers that chose to work for peace, correct?
Yes. The others went to war, but they were older than me, And of course, the oldest one was drafted into the World War II. He was in there for 5 years fighting the Japanese in the Pacific.
Why didn't you go to war?
Well, at my age, I had some allergies, but I was a first lieutenant in the Cadet Corps. But at my time, there was no demand for soldiers or lieutenants or captains or anything like that. And so I kept my rank as a first lieutenant, but I never did have to go in.
But weren't you ready to go to Korea?
I sure was. I was ready to go kill Koreans, and I didn't even know any Koreans, why I would want to kill them. But I was ready to go. It doesn't make sense now that I look at it.
Have you remained an activist?
Yes, I've been doing my little bit, trying to work against nuclear weapons. I haven't done too well, but I met some people like you, Jonathan Shockley. I met you along the way, and I met Dr. Owen Chamberlain, Nobel laureate at UC, and some other Nobel laureates. I met some other people, and some people have helped me.
What does your family think about this business of peace? They would prefer that you had not gotten involved in it?
Yes, of course. They're like other families. They want to do what the government says, as I do too, until I found out by research that the government was wrong. There was no shelter. And we were believing the government, and they were lying to us that we could run to a fallout shelter site. Well, there was no fallout shelter to run to. We'd be murdered. We'd be blown to bits. Atomic bombs, they dig a hole, I forget, in their ground, solid rock, I think a quarter mile deep, maybe half mile wide. I'm not sure on those numbers, but an atomic bomb blowing up, heck, it'll wreck anything and almost everything. There's no shelter. But we just go along, World War I, World War II, World War III, and we accept it. And mentally, we're trained and wired not to break the law, not to ask questions, to go along with the system. And we do. We go along with the system. And we can get killed by not asking questions.